All right, so here we go with our speaker of the day, Curt Giles, introduced by Dan Hunt. Dan, do you want to take it away?
Today is Tuesday, December 15th, 2020. And our speaker today is Curt Giles. Curt's life was heavily influenced by his father, who raised him to understand that character off the ice was equally as important as playing ability on the ice. When Curt was only 16 and shortly after he began his freshman year in college, he tragically lost his father and his biggest fan in an electrical accident. The life lessons he installed in Curt are reflected in who he was as a hockey player and now as a coach. For the past 22 years, Curt has lived his passion for the game as the head coach for the Edina Hornets, where he has had the opportunity to influence not only the sport of hockey, but also the many children and young adults that have come through the Edina hockey program. And what would be a slideshow if a guy couldn't show off his grandkids? So I want to play a little video here, and then I'll finish the introduction. So these are Curt's 4 state championships.
And the Hornets are celebrating in St. Paul.
10 seconds remaining. Black stops Malmquist. Edina fans getting into full frenzy here. Final seconds. Championship to Edina.
So here again in this game. So, countdown underway, team on the ice. Edina is the champion. Celebrate.
Actually, that was Holt. Now it is Jungles in. His shot deflected. Shoulder, back to Jungles, look out. Centered, wide open. Goal! Championship, Edina. Peter Colby does it again.
So there you have it, 4 state championships in 10 years. And Curt's on the ice after that last win against Eden Prairie, and the TV crew collars him for an interview. And the interviewer says to Curt, "What's it feel like to win again?" And Curt says, "It's not about winning, it's about teaching these boys to be men." And it's that answer to that question is why we asked Curt to be our speaker today. Coach, it's all yours.
Oh, good morning. Thank you very much for having me. It's interesting to see some familiar faces. I see Mark on the call and his dog Moose in the background. So we live in the same building, so I didn't know Mark was going to be on here. So a lot of familiar faces. So yeah, it's amazing. The only reason I got invited for doing something like this and the honor for doing something like this is because something I said. We have 4 state championships, and that didn't get it done. So we said something, and hopefully something that meant something to somebody, and obviously to Dan it did. But a little bit of a background of myself. I was born and raised in the northern part of Canada. A humble upbringing with my dad drove truck, and my mom was a nurse up in the northern part of Canada. If you know where Winnipeg, Manitoba is, you're only about halfway there. So I'm about 500 miles straight north of Winnipeg. So up in the woods. I had 2 younger sisters. I grew up there. I left home when I was 14 to play hockey. Went to play junior hockey in Humboldt, Saskatchewan. Humboldt, Saskatchewan might sound familiar to some of you on here because there was a tragic bus accident about 2-3 years ago that killed a number of the kids on the team and coaching staff and a number of different things. So it's that was where I played junior hockey. I then left there to play hockey and go to school in Duluth, Minnesota, University of Minnesota, Duluth. And what does that have to do with Edina hockey, anything that have to do with Edina? My freshman year, I met my wife, Mary Pat. She's an Edina girl, and we've been residents there ever since we left college. So it's that's how I got moved into the Edina Hockey Association and Edina scene. So I've got 2 kids. Ashley's on the call today. She's got 2 kids here that live in town. And as you can see from the slides, I spend most of my time on the outdoor rink with them and spending a lot of time with the grandkids. I'm very fortunate that they live here in town. I also have a son that lives in Chicago. He's in the restaurant business, so he's not doing so well these days. So that's how I became moving here. And actually, I was drafted by the Minnesota North Stars when I was going to college at UMD, and I ended up playing here for a number of years. This was home. It was always going to be home. So it's a great place to live. It's a great community to live in. And talk a little bit about the kids that we coach. You know, the funny thing about Edina kids is they think they're spoiled. They're undisciplined. They don't work hard. They're not tough enough to play the sports that they need to play and those types of things. And we found that to be the opposite. The nice thing about Edina kids is that they're well raised by good parents. They live in a good community. They represent their community. They represent their high school. They represent their teams extremely, extremely well. And I've never seen a better and a harder working group of kids to ever deal with. So I interact with coaches across the state of Minnesota now that I coach hockey at Edina. And they always ask the same question: How can you stand to be coaching in Edina? How can you put up with it? How do you deal with it? And those types of things. Well, the best thing about that is they have no idea, because it's the best place to play, best place to coach, the best place to be a parent. So it's kind of a nice hidden secret. They think it's tough here. The expectations are high, but the expectations for the kids are high, and they live up to those expectations. So it's been a great place to coach. It's a great place to live. We chose this city to raise our kids. Now I'm seeing our kids raising their kids in this city, and again, extremely proud of that. Extremely proud of the city itself. So that's where I came from. This is how I ended up here, and proud to be here and proud to be on the call today. So the thing is when we take a look at our kids and we coach our kids, we look at it at a sense when, hockey's been part of my life since I was 4 years old. I started skating when I was 4, started playing organized hockey when I was 5. Hockey's always been a part of my life. The key to the whole thing I found is that when you get involved with kids, you have to understand that they are still kids. They're still growing, they're still learning, they're still trying to figure things out. And what kids need today, as much as anything, is they need a little bit of guidance. And a lot of guidance comes from the parents. We rely on good parents to give good guidance, but then they spend a lot more time away from parents now than they used to when they get to the high school level. So we try and create an environment that is an environment for them to understand a couple things. We have a couple strong rules within our environment, and that is you got to be disciplined. You've got to live. You've got to live on the rink and off the rink, and you got to support your community, support your high school, support your teammates. So we have a couple of very, very simple rules. And the simple rules is you work extremely hard every time you're here. You listen, you're disciplined. You don't put anybody down. Nobody puts anybody down. Everybody supports one another. We try and communicate with these kids to have a positive attitude about everything that they have when they come into our facilities. They treat their opponents with respect. They treat each other with respect. They treat their coaching staff with respect. They treat the rink people, the employees at the arena, wherever they are, home and away, with respect. When they leave a visiting locker room, it's spotless. There's nothing left on the locker room floors. It's clean. It's a discipline that we really want these kids to understand. And hopefully they understand as we win and as we lose that it's a part of a life, and we try and relate it to their life as much as possible. We've got a couple of situations. We've had some tough losses and some tough things happen to us on the rink, and you just kind of relate this to, life isn't perfect. Life is hard. And here we sit today in 2020, and isn't life hard? And if we think life is hard for us as parents and people who have seen a lot of things, there's a lot of confused kids out there about what's going on. I've got an 8-year-old granddaughter, Maddie, and she had a conversation with my daughter at one point in time here the last couple of weeks, and she was confused. She didn't understand. She didn't understand that she's going to school, she's not going to school. She's seeing her friends, she's not seeing her friends. She's going on the bus, she's not going on the bus. She's doing gymnastics, she's not doing gymnastics. And she was confused with what's going on. And how do you sit down with an 8-year-old kid and try and explain what's going on today? It's awfully difficult. And that's where we rely on good parents, good coaches to try and explain and try and help those things as much as we possibly can. So those are some of the things that we look at. We don't look at these kids as just hockey players. We look at them as young people who have a great future ahead of them. And 99.9% of these kids won't have hockey in their life to make a living at it as they continue to move forward or even get to the college level. So we try and do as much as anything is. We try and teach them some of the life lessons as they move along. And hopefully some of that winning and some of that losing will help them learn and help them understand what's to move on. So that's kind of our philosophy and kind of the way we look at it, Dan. So if anybody's got any questions, that'd be great.
If you've got some questions, please send them in a text and I'll relay them to Curt. So I'll start out here. First of all, appreciate what you had to say. For those of us that follow high school hockey, can you give us an update on when and if tryouts might start and the season might start?
Yeah. Originally, we were supposed to start November 9th, and that was pushed back to later on in November. What ended up happening then was things continue to get pushed back and continue to get pushed back. Everybody's waiting for a little bit of an announcement tomorrow in the forefront. Everybody's talking about the governor giving us a little bit of a reprieve and letting the kids go back to the youth sports plus the high school sports. So everybody's kind of sitting on pins and needles a little bit, waiting to see if that's going to happen. When it's going to happen or if it's going to happen. So a lot hanging on tomorrow's announcements and those types of things. The anticipation is that things are going to start the 21st and tryouts will start the 21st. And what's really on my mind as much as anything is that we'll probably have 75 to 80 kids try out. We'll take 40 kids. What that means is that we have to cut and sit down and talk to 40 kids, approximately 40 kids, and tell them they didn't make the team, either varsity or JV. And this year, it's going to be close to Christmas Eve. So it's going to be extremely difficult. Not looking forward to that. That's a part of this year, 2020, that's going to be tough to deal with these kids. It's hard to handle them, hand them that decision upon those in those times, but it's something we have to do. So we're waiting on more so than anything is that release to get started. And if it gets started, it'll get started next Monday.
I hadn't thought about that before. Probably the most difficult part of your job is telling kids they're not on the team. Can you talk a little bit more about that, how you prepare yourself and the actual setting? Do you email them? Do you meet with them as a group? How does that happen? We
sit down with them individually. I found that to be extremely important when I got started. When I started here, I found that coaches have in other areas have put lists on the board. So kids show up and see if their name's on the list. If it's not on the list, they didn't make the team. But we found that, and we made a dedication to these kids that what we wanted to do more so than anything is, and we sit down and cut these kids. We want to sit down with them one by one with our coaching staff and give them a little explanation of why they didn't make the team, plus some of the things they can work on to become better hockey players and hopefully advance in years to come. It's difficult with the seniors because it's their last shot at this time for a number of reasons, but I find it that we sit down individually and talk to each one of these kids. They've deserved it. They've earned that opportunity, and we find that that's the way we treat our program, and that's the way we treat our kids. It makes it more difficult because you've got to sit down face to face with a young man that is not going to make the team, and it's difficult to hear, difficult to listen, and it's very difficult to say. But we go through that process here in Edina.
And for those kids that don't make it, they obviously love hockey. They want to play hockey. What are the other opportunities for them to play hockey in Edina?
That's the city of Edina. City of Edina. Every kid that we cut from the varsity and JV team at the high school level has a place to play. We've got U16, we've got Junior Gold B, we've got Junior Gold A, and every one of those kids has an opportunity that does not make the varsity or JV team, has an opportunity to play on a good hockey team in the city of Edina. So again, one of the many, many reasons that that I coach here, one of the many, many reasons that we live here.
If we could go back to growing up in Northern Canada, a couple questions, because I'm sure for most of us, we grew up in urban environments. Your dad was an electrician. Your mom was a stay-at-home mom.
No, actually, my dad drove a truck. My dad drove a truck, and my mom was a nurse.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And how big was the town, and
Hmm.
where'd you go to school, and
Yeah,
did you still have contact with anybody from that area?
yeah, I was born and raised in La Palma, Manitoba. Population approximately about probably 6,000 people. I was the only white kid in my class up until probably high school. Majority of my classmates were Cree Indians. So I lived with a number of natives up there and went to school with a number of natives up there and those types of things. So I loved it. I got a great upbringing, great family. The thing was, is when we first moved to our house, we actually, I was born and raised there. We moved away from there and lived in a small farming district in Saskatchewan of 500 people. I think there was 18 kids in the senior class. And so I moved back up to the Paw, Manitoba again. And the first day we moved back into the Paw, Manitoba was we moved into a house and moved all our stuff in. Got up the next morning and all our bikes were stolen. So welcome to the neighborhood. So, it was a tough neighborhood. It was a tough area. Hard-nosed people. A lot of logging up there, and up a little further from there, there's a lot of mining and stuff like that. So it was a tough neighborhood. You had to get friends fast and keep friends and keep an eye on yourself. So that's where I was born and raised. And then I left there the second time when I was 14 to play hockey in Humboldt, Saskatchewan. It's just a little ways outside of Saskatoon, about 5,000 people, small farming district, great town, great people, great community. Reminds me a little bit of Edina in the sense that they really support their athletics and support their schools and support everything they have in place there. So that's how I ended up in Humboldt.
What I don't know this, but you appear to be a little bit of an introvert. What was it like at age 14 to leave your family, and did you stay with the family when
I
you went
did.
and played with the team?
Yep. And the fun thing is everybody thinks I'm an introvert, except for my daughter's on the phone and she might have something different to say about that. But it's I lived with a family in Humboldt, Saskatchewan. Actually, it was my aunt and my uncle on my mom's side, and they had three daughters, and I had the basement to myself, so I lived there. Um, yeah, I was 14. Average age in the team was probably 19 or 20, and well, the thing was is that I was a designated driver. I didn't have a driver's license, but it would be a lot cheaper if I got a ticket. So I used to take these guys to the bar. They'd go into the bar. I'd sleep in the car and wait for them, and then I'd drive them home. At least I didn't drink and drive. So, but if I got caught, it was cheaper. If I got fined for not having a license, if they got caught drinking and driving. So there's all kinds of benefits of being a 14-year-old teammate when those kids are that age. And that's actually where I learned my biggest life lesson, more so than anything from my dad. I think that's what created me as a person. I think that's what determined me on how I approach things, how I look at things. And I'll share it with you. My life lesson was is that I was 14 years old. We had kids that were overaged at 21 years old playing on that hockey team. And I first got there my first year, and I was on the power play. I was killing penalties. I was doing regular shift. I was playing a lot, and there was a lot of talk about a 14-year-old playing in Humboldt, Saskatchewan with 19 and 20-year-olds. So I started to believe I was good. I started to think I was good. I started to think I was special. I thought I was, I was full of myself. And what ended up happening one day was that I had a buddy of mine that was my friend for my whole life since I was a young kid, lived in a small farming district in Rose Valley, Saskatchewan. And he drove over to Humboldt in a winter storm, probably about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and just to see me, watch me play a game, and meet with me after the game. And so what ended up happening was I knew he was coming in the whole routine, and he stopped by after at the locker room to say hi, and I blew him off. I went to a party. I was a big shot. Everybody was talking about me. My head was inflated. My ego was inflated. And I blew him off, went to a party after the game that we'd won. So I walked in the door, and when I got home, before curfew, of course, but I walked in the door. My dad met me at the door. And my dad never swore. He never swore. And he lit me up. The first thing he said to me is, "Who the blankety blank do you think you are?" I'm 14 years old. I'm dumber than a rock, and I say, "Well, what do you mean? What are you talking about?" He goes, I can't believe you. He said, you know what? I'm so disappointed. And you hate those words. I'm disappointed. He says, I'm so disappointed in you. You can't believe it. A buddy of yours comes over an hour and a half or 2 hours through a snowstorm to see you and spend some time with you. And you think you're so important. You blow him off. I'm really disappointed. He walked away. That changed my whole thought process of everything. You want to get humbled in a hurry? He was my number one supporter. He was the guy that I believed in, and he believed in me. He always taught me and was always encouraged me that I could do anything I wanted to do. I'm 5.5 feet tall. I weigh 175, 180 pounds. Do you think I was going to play in the NHL? Do you think I was going to play in college? Do you think I was going to play anything or achieve anything at the hockey level, at the highest level? Absolutely not. I was too small. Probably wasn't fast enough. Probably wasn't big enough. Probably wasn't strong enough. But he believed in me, and he trained me and taught me to believe in myself that I could do anything I wanted to do. And he humbled me. He humbled me to the largest degree that single night. I will never forget that, and I'll never forget that feeling. And that was the thing that changed my life totally when I was 14 years old.
Thank you for sharing that story. When did you make the decision, or when did you think you want to go on and play hockey in college, and how did you end up at the University of Minnesota Duluth?
Well, I was playing junior hockey in Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and the traditional route is to go from where I was playing to major junior hockey, where you're not eligible for college. Well, my dad, who had an 8th grade education and drove truck, said, you want to know something? He said, what you should really think about doing is getting an education. And if you can get an education by playing the sport that you love, what a benefit that is. So we started to talk about college, and we knew nothing about college hockey, nothing about anything like that, until a gentleman by the name of Bruce McLeod showed up on our doorstep and wanted to know if I was interested in going to school in Duluth, Minnesota. So went through the process there. Bruce McLeod recruited me to go to UMD. My dad and I got in an airplane for the very first time. He was probably 40 years old, first time he ever got on an airplane. So we got an airplane and went down to Duluth and watched Michigan Tech and University of Minnesota Duluth play a game, and I was just in awe. I'd never seen a rink full of people. There was a band there. I'd never seen a band at a hockey rink. There were cheerleaders. I mean, the whole routine. I mean, the environment and everything was just electric when we walked into the facility. So I got really interested quick in seeing, and my eyes opened up very quickly to another avenue of maybe possibility, something for me to do. So my dad wanted me to get an education. He knew the struggles he had without an education. He wanted me to get an education, and it was important to him, and it worked out well for me.
And if I may ask you, it was not long after you started the University of Minnesota Duluth that your father passed away. Yeah,
my freshman year, my mom and my dad dropped me off in September. I think it was in September. And November 4th, 1975, my dad was killed in a truck accident. What ended up happening was that well, the situation was really interesting. I was in a class, which was good. And one of the secretaries from the athletic department walked into my class, right down and it was a large class of a couple hundred people. She walked down to talk to the professor, and the professor said, "Is Curt Giles in his class?" And I went, "Whoa, this can't be good." And I said, "Well, maybe they were checking on me. Well, at least I was in class, for one thing." And then she said, "Come with me." So she brought me over to the athletic office, and the athletic director, the guy who recruited me, Bruce McLeod, was the business manager at that time, and secretary let me know my dad had been killed in a truck accident. So what ended up happening was he was driving a truck and he's delivering feed out on the farm. And the farmer had hung a man-made power line from the house to the feed shed. It had rained substantially at that point in time, and the truck he backed in cleared the power line no problem as he unloaded the feed. And as he unloaded the feed, the truck rose up out of the dirt, and he went back to the cab of the truck, grabbed the cab of the truck, and he got electrocuted. So, yep, that was it.
And then you stayed at UMD and got your degree?
I did. What I ended up doing that year was I went home, went to the funeral, and the one thing I can tell you about my dad's funeral is that a unique situation happened. I referred to earlier the Pa, Manitoba, and I was the only white kid and mostly Cree Indians. My dad had befriended a number of kids up there. We had nothing, and whatever we had, he gave to them as well and helped them and support them. So there was about 8 Cree Indian kids that jumped in a pickup truck, and the Pa, Manitoba was about 500 miles from Humboldt, Saskatchewan, where the funeral was. It was in the dead of winter in November, and 8 of them got into a pickup truck. 4 of them in the cab, 4 of them in the box, and they rotate every once in a while so they could keep warm and come down to the funeral. So that's the impact my dad had on a lot of people. So what I ended up doing then was I ended up staying home for the funeral, going through the process and those types of things. My mom said, you know what, you got to get going. You got to get back to school. You got to get back to your life. You got to get things going again. So she packed me back up, sent me back to school. I stayed there for 4 years, got my degree, and then moved on from there.
Yeah. And did you go straight from school to playing in the National Hockey League?
I did. I was drafted my junior year at UMD by the Minnesota North Stars. In 1979, 1980, when I graduated, I went to Minnesota. I spent 12 years with the Minnesota North Stars. I spent 1 year in New York, and I finished my career in St. Louis with the St. Louis Blues.
And then when your career in the NHL was over, what was next in your life?
Well, what I did was while I was still playing hockey at the time, and my dad always told me that you can't do this the entire life. You know, you've got to figure out what you're going to do beyond your hockey days, because your body's going to wear out, things are going to wear out, your career's only going to be so long, so you've got to have something to do in your career. So what I did was, again, give this credit to Edina, Minnesota, was that I reached out to a couple of people in Edina and said that I wanted to understand and learn a little bit about the business world. So a gentleman by the name of John Payton said, I'll tell you what, here's the top 50 corporations in the state of Minnesota. I want you to study these, take a look at these. You tell me which one of these companies that you think you have an attraction to, and I'll see if I can set something up for you to go talk to some people. I said, great. So I picked about 4 or 5 companies. He said, didn't know anybody here, didn't know anybody there. He knew a couple of people here, knew a guy here, knew a guy there. Well, there's one gentleman that he knew, a gentleman by the name of Lee Anderson. So Lee Anderson agreed to meet with me and have a conversation with me. And so I had an opportunity to meet with Lee Anderson and have a conversation with him. And he just purchased a company out of bankruptcy called API Supply Company, which was the old Reserve Supply Company. We sold building materials to local retail lumber yards across the Midwest. So he just purchased that company. He said, here, come on. He said, I actually want to meet with him. And he stood up from behind his desk. He's about 6'9". So I thought, whoa, this ought to be good. He's a big man. So Lee said, let's jump in the car. I want to introduce you to some people. So we jumped into his car from the meeting, went over to API Supply Company. He introduced me to the president and the VP of sales and marketing over there and said, hey, you know what? I'd like to get this guy started into the business. And he said, there's one thing I can guarantee. He said, you'll learn the business here. I won't be able to pay you what you're making playing professional hockey, but at least you get the experience. I said, I'm all in. So what I did was I worked in the off seasons. When I wasn't playing, I would train in the morning, then I'd go to work at API Supply Company. I started working in the warehouse. I started to ride with the truck drivers. I did some inside sales, outside sales. And then when I retired in 1993, I took over the position of sales manager for Lee's company of API Supply Company and started my working career.
And when did you start coaching anywhere in the Edina hockey system?
Well, I started coaching, I think it was Bantams at the time when I retired. My son was a Bantam, so I had a chance to spend a couple winters with him and a gentleman by the name of Dick Blueston. If anybody knows Dick Blueston, he's a character. And Dick was, he was adamant that I, started to coach and started to do some things, so I wasn't sure if I wanted to or not. The thing is, my son played Bantams for a year or two, and then he decided that, it wasn't for him. And he took a look at downhill skiing and getting out with his friends and doing some different things other than hockey. And I supported that. He said, great, knock yourself out. Well, that's when Dick kind of put a little more pressure on to staying involved in coaching hockey and those types of things. So we coached the Bantam A level for a couple of years. Bart Larson retired from Edina High School. So I put my name in the hat and I got the job in 1999.
You spoke about this earlier about what a great community it was. Did you go into that job with any apprehensions or misperceptions about what it'd be like to coaching these kids who's, I assume you face this every year, many of their families think they're, the greatest skater Edina's ever seen.
No, to be honest with you, I went into it very naive. I went into it like I was going to change the world. I had the attitude that I'd played a long time. I've been coached by a lot of good people. I was just going to translate that to the kids, and they're going to accept that. And they're going to move forward, and we're going to have a great time. And I went into it, and my first mistake I made was I thought I was going to make everybody happy. And that's difficult to do anywhere, and especially in Edina, because everybody has an opinion. Everybody is entrepreneurial. Everybody's opinion means a lot, and so keeping everybody happy would be extremely difficult. So I learned that quickly, continue to grow and continue to learn. And I continue to learn today, to be honest with you. I've been doing this 22 years at the high school level in Edina, and I continue to learn from our assistant coaches, from other coaches, parents, kids. I continue to learn about the game and how to approach the game. And the kids have changed so much over the years. Kids are sharp. They're independent. Their expectations are extremely high. There's a lot of things that kids have changed. Coaching has changed totally in the last 10 years at the least. There used to be a chance. We used to be able to threaten them with ice time, threaten them with skating them, threaten them to do a lot of things, and you could kind of Herbie Brooks them into this whole thing in regards to, you're challenging them physically, and you're challenging them to take their ice time away and challenging them to do this. You can't do that anymore. The kids are totally different. The way they approach the game now, the way they approach athletics, and those types of things. So things have changed substantially. It's been fun to learn, fun to watch, and been fun to part of. And I guess it's a long answer to your question. I went into it and I thought it was going to be a piece of cake, and it's not. But I've learned that there's a lot of things to learn along the way. And to tell you the truth, I love doing it. I love dealing with the kids. I love working with the kids, and the kids are the key to the whole thing.
I've got a lot of text here, people asking about your career with the North Star. So could you share a favorite story about a teammate, a coach, a game, anything along those lines?
Yeah, I just love playing. I love my teammates. I can't name two teammates I didn't like. So that the whole concept and the whole environment of the opportunity. I wanted to be a professional hockey player since I was 2 years old. And then you finally get there, and I said, I'd have to think of my first NHL game as the thing I remember the most. My first NHL hockey game was, I was paired with Greg Smith on defense. We're playing in Buffalo, New York. And at that time, Buffalo had a line called the French Connection line. Gilbert Perreault, René Robert, and Richard Martin. They're three of the highest scoring players in the NHL at that time in the late 70s and early 80s. And they started Greg and myself. And 17 seconds into it, we got scored on. So that was the start of my NHL career. Got out there, stood around. They went by us like we were standing still. I felt like a fence post. And I felt like they had 6 guys on the ice and we only had 4. It was a transition you had to make and had to understand. But you'll never forget your first NHL hockey game. And I love playing for the Minnesota North. I love playing in Minnesota. I love the state of Minnesota. This is where we made our home. Edina is the same way. We've been in Edina since 1979.
One final question: what is your involvement with the rest of the hockey association, all the youth clubs, and with the high school girls team?
High school girls team. I love working with Sammy. And before Sammy, the coaches there have been fantastic. And the nice thing about the setup with the Hornets Nest at Braemar is we're right next door to each other. We see each other almost every single day. You look at the success that Sammy has had, look at the success that program has had, and we have a great interaction with the girls across the hall. They've got great teams. The kids are super. What's really fun is when we've got a brother, and they got one of the brother's sisters is on the girls team. It's always fun because we've had the Chorskys, we've had the Jungles, we've had the Fiddlers, we've had, you can go name after name after name of kids that we've had. One of the girls is on the team and one of the boys on the team at the same time. So it's been a really great relationship. It has been from the start, even prior to that. From the girls program started, I have the utmost respect for the girls program. And I have the utmost respect for Sammy and what she does. and watch her work every single day. She's a quality coach. And the best thing about her is she's a quality person. And she does a great job with those girls, and they do a great job there. So the youth program itself, it's really interesting. Every once in a while, somebody says, you're not involved in the youth program much. Well, little do they know how much we're involved with it. We're involved with the youth program a lot. We deal with the presidents, the vice presidents. We offer the opportunity to work with their coaches. We have kids on our team that will designate each one of our kids or one kid to a certain type of program. For example, you have one kid will be associated with the PUEAs, one kid will be associated with the PUBs, one kid will be associated with the Bantam A's, Bantam B's, and such, so that we get exposure to the sense that we get our kids exposed to the youth program. They give back to the youth program by supporting them with a little bit of coaching, a little bit of interaction, and those types of things as well too. So we've got a great youth program. The Edina Youth Program is one of the finest in the United States. It's one of the largest. It's one of the best. We see some of the best kids, and there's no question the success that we've had over the years, as much as anything is that we've had great kids that are not just great kids, but they're trained very well. They listen very well. They're disciplined, and it all comes from home first. It comes from their parents and comes from home, and it comes from the coaches they've got going through the Edina Youth Program. So we're very, very fortunate to have really good kids coming up through the system.
Coach, this has been great. Thank you for your time answering the questions. I've seen a lot of great comments about what you said, and good luck to you this season.
Well, thank you very much for having me. Thank you to everybody. And Mark, keep an eye on Moose over there.
All right. Well, thank you.
Great job, Curt. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Fantastic, you guys. Wow. Dan, excellent questions. Really, I've enjoyed it thoroughly. It's amazing. One takeaway for me has just been listening to what your father said to you and how that changed the trajectory of your life. And, just a reminder, all of us who have children, how important our roles are with our kids. They do listen, and look what happened with your life. So thank you again, Curt, for sharing with us. Ashley, we'd love to hear your little version and side of the story as well sometime, but we have run out of time. I want to say thank you to all of our visitors and visiting Rotarians, and especially Mrs. Santa and Santa Claus, who are our special guests today. So thank you, everybody. Please enjoy your holidays over the next couple weeks. Spend time with your family, love where you're at. And we will look forward to seeing you in the new year, January 5th, at our meeting on Tuesday morning at 7:30. Please visit our website and check it out. There's lots more there. Also, remember, send that letter to Afira. Type up something meaningful to a senior here in our community. It will definitely be accepted and needed at this time. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great holiday, and we'll see you in the new year. Have a great week. Bye.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. I think
Bye.
Santa is very busy. He's sorry he had to leave the meeting early.
We understand. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again, everybody.
Great program, Margaret.
Thank you.
Great job, Margaret.